Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're attempting, I guess you'd call it a strange kind of time travel.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
We're not talking about physically moving through history, but something far more personal, something that, well, feels a lot more fragile.
We're talking about retrieving memories. Specifically, we're focusing on those deeply subjective fragments of your past that exist only inside your mind.
Right, like the impression of a sound or the exact color of an old neighborhood.
Exactly, or a critical moment with a person or a place that's long gone. And the key thing here is that these memories have no external anchor. No photos, no home movies.
Zero documentation.
Zero.
These are, the most fragile historical records we have. For decades, the only way to share them was through, the clumsy language of telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
But our source material today, this work from Shish's Substack, it details a really unexpected and profound partnership. It's between deep nostalgia and advanced generative AI.
And the goal is to pull those purely mental impressions out into the visual world.
The author describes the results as not perfect, not exact, but beautifully close.
Which is such a great description of memory itself.
It is. So our mission in this deep dive is to really understand the specific mechanism. How does modern AI go beyond just, generating a random picture? How does it interpret and visualize the subjective essence of a decades-old memory?
And what does this all mean for how we define and access our own past?
Okay, let's unpack this journey into what feels like subjective digital archaeology.
Well, when people think about AI image generators, they're usually thinking about, fantasy art or maybe modifying photos that already exist.
Sure.
This is fundamentally different because here there's zero visual source material to start with.
None at all.
So the astonishment isn't really in the AI's rendering power. We've seen that. The real magic, the amazing part, is its ability to interpret.
To interpret the subjective essence, to move from a feeling to a form.
Exactly, to translate pure emotion into physical aesthetics.
So how does a user even start? You can't just type, "my childhood felt good," and get a meaningful result. What kind of inputs, what kind of precise but abstract data does the algorithm need?
Right. The user has to become a kind of meticulous prompt engineer, and the source material really spends a lot of time on this.
Okay.
They feed the AI fragments, things like the specific year, the overarching mood. Was it innocent? Melancholy? Was it exciting?
And then crucially, they add these subtle sensory details like the color of the air or the feel of the humidity.
Yes. And on top of that, they layer the aesthetic knowledge, the specific style of the era, and those tiny little details the conscious brain might forget, but the memory has somehow locked away.
I think we need to linger on that for a second because this is where the computational brilliance really meets the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
When a user types in something like the humid air and the soft glow of late afternoon, how does the AI quantify that visually? We're talking to an audience that gets the basics of these models.
That's a great question because it's not magic. It's computational translation. It happens in the latent space.
Okay.
The AI, which is likely a sophisticated diffusion model, it's been trained on a massive data set, billions of images. So when you say humid air, the model references every image in its training set that's associated with humidity.
Which would mean things like specific light scattering or atmospheric haze.
Right, or a certain kind of glow around streetlights, maybe some color desaturation. The input, humid air, acts as a weighting instruction.
So it's telling the AI to pull all these aesthetic components from its massive library of visual knowledge and then apply them with a high probability to the final picture.
Precisely. It's a collaboration that requires immense human creativity, knowing how to translate your own subjective feeling into these computationally weighted concepts.
And the process isn't instant. The source really emphasizes that this takes carefully crafted prompts, iterative prompts.
Oh, dozens of attempts, often, to get it right. The human is the artistic director, coaxing this visualization out of the AI's vast dictionary of aesthetics.
And the goal is fundamentally subjective. It's not about recreating the moment as it objectively was.
No, not at all.
It's about recreating it as the user remembers it, filtered through decades of nostalgia. So the metric for success isn't forensic accuracy.
The metric is that emotional resonance, that immediate, powerful jolt of recognition.
That moment where the user just says, yes, that's the feeling, that's the moment.
And that validation is the entire point. It confirms that the memory, even without any external proof, is subjectively valid. And now, for the first time ever, it's shareable.
to really get how this works, we have to dive into the specific case studies the author detailed.
Mhm.
The first one is a fantastic example. It's about using purely subjective input to reconstruct an object completely lost to time. We're talking about the undocumented beetle.
Yes, the 1961 orange Volkswagen Beetle. This memory dates all the way back to the author's teenage years. A really crucial, formative period learning to drive in this very distinct car.
And the setting is so critical here. It anchors the memory not just in time, but in a place before it changed forever.
Right.
The driving was on the streets of Goa, which, at the time the author remembers it, was still quiet, sleepy. A world away from the tourist resort it would become.
And what makes this so impressive is the information gap. The author is very clear. There were 0 photographs of this specific orange beetle.
None.
And none of those specific streets in that specific condition were archived visually. It was pure recollection.
But this is where it gets really interesting. The AI compensates for that lack of documentation. It brings what the source calls its collective memory to the table. Tell us what that consists of here.
It's the AI's archival knowledge base. It's been trained on millions of images of historical artifacts and aesthetics. So while the human provides the very specific color and year,
The orange, the 1961.
right, the AI brings the deep, generalized understanding of 1960s car design, the curves, the proportions, the specific texture of the materials they used back then.
And crucially, it knows how to marry that with the specific environment the user describes.
Exactly. It doesn't just know car and street. It knows the visual vocabulary of Goan streets in the 1980s or 90s when the author was driving. The typical architectural colors, the kind of tropical foliage.
The sun-worn texture of the pavement. So the user's sensory inputs, the car's color, the description of cracked vinyl seats, the narrow Goan lanes, and that specific humid air,
Yeah.
they act like incredibly detailed instructions.
They're telling the AI, take the generalized knowledge of a 61 Beetle, render it with the specific visual conditions of a humid 1980s Goan evening, and focus the light refraction to create a soft glow.
It's the ultimate merging of the subjective with this huge set of objective aesthetic data.
And the technical challenge is significant. The user has to be incredibly precise in their phrasing to stop the AI from just defaulting to, a modern picture of Goa or a generic Beetle photo from a car catalog.
That focus on prompt precision really addresses that critique we often hear about these models, that they're just guessing.
They aren't guessing.
No, they're calculating the highest probability of that aesthetic existing, based on these highly weighted inputs.
Absolutely. And the outcome was profound. The author described the resulting image as startlingly accurate, created with no photographs at all. It achieved that intense feeling of discovering a photograph that had been misplaced for 40 years.
It captured the texture and the mood perfectly. It resurrected a moment that was previously only accessible in a fading mental snapshot.
And that success with a static image is powerful enough. But the author didn't stop there.
No. They took this principle of subjective reconstruction and pushed it into a much stranger, moving format. Which brings us to the second case study, the cinematic recreation.
This is where they move from creating a mental snapshot to creating a short, emotionally charged film recreating the entire feel of mid-1970s Goa.
And the starting point for this was, it's almost laughably minimal.
Right.
The only documentation was a single, very old, black and white photo of the author from 1975 when they were about 6 years old.
And that single static image, that black and white seed, became the foundation for a whole video recreation. The jump from a still image to a dynamic, moving piece that requires several extra layers of input.
You're talking about pace, light dynamics, motion.
All of it. It wasn't just about the objects and the people. It was about the tempo of life.
The unhurried spirit of that era, as the source puts it.
Yeah, the user had to refine the prompts to capture that specifically. The movement, the color palette, the sense of innocence.
Think about the difference computationally. For the Beetle, the AI had to calculate light and shadow for a single moment in time. For the video, it had to calculate how the sun moved across a street over, say, a 30-second sequence, how pedestrians might walk, how the wind moves the leaves. All of it weighted by the subjective memory of that specific slow era.
And the experience of watching that recreation was, understandably, incredibly powerful. It felt like stepping back into a world the user thought was entirely lost.
It suggests that AI can reassemble these locked-away moving memories into something. The source says almost cinematic.
Yes, it moves the memory from a fading snapshot to an accessible short film.
It does more than just reconstruct visuals, though. It reconstructs the sense of place.
In the sense of time. That unhurried pace is a temporal aesthetic the AI derives from understanding millions of documented period films, news footage, photography that captured the gait and motion of people from that era.
So if we connect all this back to the bigger picture, the conceptual framework here centers entirely on what the author defines as the AI's collective memory.
And what's fascinating here is that we have to keep reminding ourselves that this collective memory isn't literal recollection by the AI. It's not remembering your beetle.
Right.
It's a vast, internal, interconnected understanding of eras, aesthetics, cultures, textures, styles, all the objects that have existed across human history and been digitized.
So if we look at the partnership, there's a clear division of labor. The human user brings the purely subjective emotional truth, the feeling, the sentiment, the detailed sensory input.
And the AI brings the expansive visual vocabulary. It provides the rendering capability to take that abstract emotion and cloak it in the correct, period-appropriate visual textures and light.
Without the human, the AI can only create generalized fiction.
And without the AI, the human's memory remains trapped inside their head.
The practical utility of this is just huge. It helps you externalize your internal life. It lets you bring the past forward and literally show your children or your friends what your early life looked like, even when no document exists.
It rescues these formative moments from obscurity.
And this leads us to the crucial takeaway, which is the distinction between what's being recreated. The source is exceptionally clear on this. What is recreated isn't history, it is memory. And that distinction changes the value proposition entirely.
It really does. History demands objectivity, evidence, verifiable fact. It strives for perfect recall.
But memory, especially nostalgic memory, is allowed to be imperfect. It's allowed to be warm, subjective, deeply personal.
We want the memory of that orange beetle to feel a certain way, hazy, sun-drenched, a little worn. We don't necessarily want a forensic diagram of where the rust spots were.
Right. If the AI generated a cold, hard, factually accurate image of the street, if it could somehow achieve perfect historical recall, it might actually diminish the nostalgic value.
The imperfection, that warm filter of time, is part of the memory's truth. So the AI isn't replacing memory, it's illuminating it by applying the emotional filter the user provides.
And that illumination is why people find these visualizations so moving. It's not just a technical achievement, it's an emotional rescue mission.
It confirms that the essence of a deeply personal moment is communicable. It transforms forgotten internal moments into tangible, shareable stories.
That transformation, turning the purely internal into the visibly external, that's the miracle here.
It allows your younger self, the moments and places of your childhood that never got recorded, to step into the light again, visualized with care and with craft.
So what does this all mean for how we perceive our personal archives? We've just witnessed a complete shift in how deeply personal, undocumented memories can be handled.
Yeah.
They've gone from being trapped inside our heads to becoming shareable, subjective, visual stories. And they're powered by combining this highly specific human experience with the AI's massive aesthetic knowledge base.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate, deeply personal collaboration between emotion and algorithm.
And this ability to render these highly personal, emotionally weighted memories, it raises a really important and compelling question for all of us.
Okay.
If AI can so lovingly and subjectively recreate memories that are allowed to be imperfect and warm, what are the profound implications for how we define personal truth versus documented historical fact when we look at our own lives?
If that beautiful reconstructed image of the orange beetle gives you that powerful emotional jolt of recognition, that feeling of authenticity, does it fundamentally matter that it is technically an interpretation based on weighted aesthetic probabilities and not a verified historical photograph?
Exactly. When these visualizations of our lost moments are so convincing, so emotionally resonant, do they then change the memory itself? Do they maybe strengthen it or even alter details through that visual reinforcement?
Or do they just succeed in what the author intended?
Yeah.
Releasing the memory from the confines of the mind, allowing it to finally be seen and shared.
It's something to ponder the next time you try to explain the color of the air in your own lost past.